Professor Foley, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Slaughter, members of the committee, my name is Elizabeth Price Foley. I'm a professor of law at Florida International University College of Law. It's a public law school in Miami, and I'm honored to be here today. I believe that the House would, in fact, have standing to litigate the constitutional claims against the executive branch, and I also believe that the House would have an excellent chance of winning on the merits of a claim that the executive branch has failed to faithfully execute the laws, especially the Affordable Care Act. In the interest of time, I'm going to limit my remarks to the issue of standing. I provided a detailed legal analysis to the House Judiciary Committee when I appeared before them earlier this year, so I've included that analysis as an appendix to my remarks before the committee here. But to summarize, existing case law indicates that the House would have standing to assert an institutional injury if the following four elements are satisfied. First, the House should explicitly authorize the lawsuit by a majority vote. Second, the lawsuit should assert, as an injury in fact, the nullification of a specific act of Congress, such as the ACA. Third, the lawsuit should be carefully tailored to target a constitutional transgression for which there is no private plaintiff available. And finally, the lawsuit should target an executive action for which proportionate and tailored political self-help is unavailable. Now, let me back up and talk about the big picture of legislative standing. I'm somewhat amused by the critics who suggest that the House is incapable of suffering an institutional injury recognizable by courts. In institutional injury cases, courts are understandably demanding. They want to make sure that the plaintiff that's before them is speaking on behalf of the institution. They're not open to lawsuits that are brought by an ad hoc group of legislators who lack authorization to speak on behalf of the institution. That's why most of the attempts have failed. And of course, this is common sense. It's why institutional authorization for litigation to allege institutional injury requires that authorization. The courts are also reticent to adjudicate interbranch disputes that can be resolved by other means. So if there's like a private plaintiff waiting in the wings to bring the lawsuit, the courts sort of prefer to wait for that case to arise. That was the situation, for example, in Raines versus Byrd, a Supreme Court decision in 1997, where the Supreme Court was acutely aware of the fact that the Line Item Veto Act that was being challenged by 6 congressional plaintiffs was a law that would injure private individuals, and those individuals would have standing to sue. And indeed, the following year in Clinton versus New York, a private plaintiff brought such a lawsuit, and the Supreme Court declared the Line Item Veto Act unconstitutional. All branches are capable of suffering an institutional injury, of having their constitutional prerogatives trenched in some way, and all branches should have standing to vindicate their power under the right circumstances. States, for example, have standing to challenge federal intrusions into their constitutionally reserved powers. In fact, they've been quite successful in a series of Supreme Court cases, including New York versus United States, Prince versus United States, and most recently, the health care decision by the Supreme Court, NFIB versus Sebelius. Even more to the point, state legislators have standing in federal court to assert institutional injury when their state executive nullifies their legislative acts. This is evidenced by the Supreme Court's decision in Coleman versus Miller, and also by a unanimous 10th Circuit panel decision from March of this year called Kerr versus Hickenlooper. But let's go beyond states. Article 2, our executive branch, is the very entity that seems so offended by the prospect of being a defendant in a House lawsuit. But Article 2 is not shy about resorting to the courts to vindicate its own constitutional prerogatives. Article 2 routinely sues states for violating federal laws, claiming preemption of those state laws in cases like Arizona versus United States decided by the Supreme Court in 2012. In these preemption cases, Article 2 is vindicating an institutional injury inflicted on both Congress and the executive. inflicted on both Congress and the executive. Likewise, federal agencies routinely have standing to litigate against entities that don't comply with their lawful orders. Agencies like EPA, FDA, NLRB, FCC, and on and on. The essence of these enforcement lawsuits is that the agencies have standing because noncompliance with the statutes under their jurisdiction injures or diminishes those agencies' institutional power. Institutional standing is routinely granted to Article II in all of these situations. Courts have stated in passing that as part of the executive's duty to faithfully execute the laws, the executive branch may resort to litigation. But it's important to realize that this take care clause itself is not a grant of jurisdiction to federal courts. Standing is something, the Supreme Court has made abundantly clear, is something that emanates from Article III, Sections 2, case or controversy language. And it's something all litigants, all branches of government have to satisfy to litigate in federal court. The standing requirements, in other words, are the same for all branches of government. Litigation certainly isn't the only way that the executive branch can enforce the laws, but it's a very good and freely available option, as it should be. So, why wouldn't litigation also be an available option to Congress when it suffers an institutional injury? Members of Congress are expected to defend Congress's lawmaking prerogative by all means available. In fact, your Article 6 oath demands this. And litigation may be the best, most tailored and proportionate